So we're living obviously in very interesting times. Not too long ago, it seemed as if the BRIC countries, and along with most of Latin America and other affiliates, might be coalescing an economic nationalism, kind of inclusive economic nationalism, organized around the premise of social solidarity and social democracy. And now it seems we've gone a complete 180-degree turn. Progressive governments aren't defeated. They're in retreat. They're on the run. Their projects are shattered and scattered, overcome by corruption or rising chauvinism or kind of resurgent, much more bellicose neoliberalism or authoritarian neoliberalism or horrific violence and polarization. It's a moment that in some ways really demands large-scale comparative analysis of the deceptively particular but actually homologous political forms, various fundamentalisms that have emerged across different global regions in the wake of the failure of neoliberalism. And when I talk about the failure of neoliberalism, I'm not just talking about its failure as a growth strategy, but its subjective promise as a mode of creativity and tolerance and openness, kind of a political imaginary of a more open world, a more creative world, a more fulfilling world. What's that?
You're trying to get the light stuff.
Oh, okay. All right. It's okay. I'm fine. Don't. That's a little better. Thanks. So it demands comparative analysis, but I'm not going to be doing the comparative analysis here. Instead, I'll focus relentlessly on one country, the United States. It's not a singular problem, the United States. The rise of a nationalist movement, of a chauvinist movement to the highest levels of power, but its expression in the form of the individual rights fetishism, hell-bent on driving the catastrophe forward, is singular. When I take one of the things that's kind of a vernacular, I'm going to discuss a little bit about what I mean by American exceptionalism in more specific terms, but certainly one of the things that always captures as a Latin American is that somebody who works in a country where the social democratic ideal can't be defeated, no matter how much violence, no matter how much repression, no matter how much sectarianism, no matter how much corruption overcomes it, that the constant return to a certain kind of social democratic Jacobinism in Latin America. What strikes me as the kind of vernacular or just a way of thinking about American exceptionalism is no other country in the world do you see mass movements demanding austerity, right? No other, this is a fairly unique thing, right? This is particularly around the presidency of Barack Obama.
Perhaps the only other country in that part of the world which has some sort of a frontier ideology, but a very, very different history, is, to my mind, Brazil. And I was actually wondering, not so much in the more recent incarnations taking us into the 20th century, but going back to where you began in the 19th century, do you actually see any meaning or fruitful outcome from making the comparison between the Brazilian frontier ideology and the US one?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm using Turner in a very particular, narrow way in the wake of the world we're living in now with Trump's election. But certainly, there's been a lot of work comparing frontiers, comparative global frontiers. And what I'm trying to do in the book actually is I do much more of a comparison, not specifically Brazil, but in general, one of the things that make Spanish America unique in terms of more Spanish American than Portuguese American, but I'll come back to Brazil. was their embrace of an old Roman law doctrine at the time of independence, ute possidetis. So the United States comes into the world denying that it has a western frontier. I mean, it accepts the Mississippi the American Revolution is about moving. One of the reasons for the American Revolution is because they refused to accept the British attempt to create a petition line that stops settlement west of the Alleghenies, and they want to push forward. I mean, Britain wanted to partition North America, and U.S. settlers refused it, and then they wanted to on to the Mississippi, and then once they won their revolution, the Treaty of Paris in 1783 defines the Mississippi as the western border, but nearly immediately they push forward, they reject that, they define the Mississippi as the Mississippi Basin, and they're constantly moving west.